This conference will now be recorded.
So, when we are working with the Power BI desktop, Power BI desktop, and whenever we want to connect with any data source, if you want to connect with any data, we have n number of data options are there to load the data from different sources into Power BI. Whatever the number of sources that you have, you can observe that one from get data option. Once you open a Power BI desktop, open a Power BI desktop, whenever you click on get data, you are going to identify the list of sources that you can connect with Power BI. These are all the sources. Okay. Now, as part of our journey, as part of a job, everyone may not use everything. Some people will use SQL Server. Some people will use analysis services. Some people will use Power BI data sets or data flows. Some people will use semantic models or lake houses. Some people will use data warehouses, Azure SQL. Like different people will use different things. So far, we have been using Excel as a data source. In one of the class, we use SQL Server as a data source. We used. In the interview, they will ask you a question. What are the different sources? What are the different sources that you worked with Power BI? One of the standard question. You must be in a position to tell you used at least 4 to 5 data sources you need to tell. So we'll address that one in next 1 or 2 days of time. But this session is for something different. Now, whatever the source that can be, like that can be an Excel, that can be an SQL server, that can be Azure, that can be Snowflake, whatever the data source it is. When you are connecting with Power BI, you have three types of options are there. So whenever you are connecting the data from Power BI with any source, that can be anything, you have a three types of options are there. How you are going to establish a connection with Power BI and data. That technically people call it as connectivity modes. This is a very important interview question. They will ask a question, what are the different types of connectivity modes that we have? That is the first one. We have three types of connectivity modes. One is import, direct query, live connection. So how you are going to consume your data from Power BI can be any one of this type. That can be import or a direct query or a live connection. So in the intro, they will ask what are the connectivity modes. These are the three things. They will ask a difference between import and direct query. They will ask a question of direct query and live connection differences, or import and live connectivity differences, advantages, disadvantages. They are going to ask. So today's session, we are going to focus what is import, what is direct query, what is live connection. We are going to understand theoretically. Once that is done, we are going to connect with Power BI and different sources by using these connectivity modes. Like we are going to cover SQL Server, We are going to cover Snowflake. We are going to cover semantic models or data sets. We are going to cover SSAS. We are going to cover SharePoint as part of these sessions. Next 4 to 5 sessions, we are going to cover all these things so that in the interview you can tell you worked with these sources. Okay. So now, as I mentioned, whenever you are connecting from Power BI desktop to any data, there are three types of options are there: import, direct query, and live connection. So the first one is import that we are discussing now. Import. Import is nothing but we are going to take a copy of data to that Power BI file, which means let's assume that we have a table with the 5 records. Whenever you load the data, that 5 records will go and sit inside Power BI. Import means we are copying the data into your Power BI file. Let's assume that once you load these 5 records, if you have a new data, another 2 records came, then it becomes 7. That data will not go to Power BI automatically. It will not go because we taken the copy of this one. And if you want to load the latest data, again you need to perform a refresh. Refresh. If it is in Power BI desktop, you have a refresh button is there. If it is in Power BI service, you have a scheduled refresh option is there. So periodically we are going to update our data. So import means we are taking the copy of the data into Power BI. Automatically new changes will not be reflected to your Power BI. Then after you are going to create a model inside a Power BI, and then after you are going to create visualizations because you already have the data available here and you are creating a visualizations. It is a faster in performance. It is going to load the data faster. That is all about a import, but it has two major disadvantages, which is nothing but because you are taking the copy of a data into Power BI and Power BI is going to store the data, and at the time of working with the Power BI desktop there is no issue. But whenever you are publishing this report, you know what is publish. Whenever you publish this report in a cloud, in a cloud, your cloud is going to allow only 1 GB of data. It is going to allow only 1 GB of data. So, whenever you are loading a data of a 5 GB in your Power BI desktop, and once you've done all the development for 2 to 3 months of time, so whenever you publish that one to cloud, it is going to give an error saying that boss, I can allow only 1 GB of a data. So Power BI Cloud can hold only 1 GB of a data set. It will not allow more than 1 GB. That is one of the limitation. Similarly, similarly, as I mentioned, it is going to take the copy of data into Power BI desktop. Whenever you get a new data, that will not be moved to cloud automatically, and you need to enable a scheduled refresh. Once you move your data set to cloud, you can perform only 8 times scheduled refresh. 8 times scheduled refresh. If you want to update your data set for every 15 minutes, let's assume I am getting the new data, the bus tickets or train tickets or movie tickets, whatever. I want to get the latest data for each and every 5 minutes into my dashboard or report. What you need to do, because you are taking the copy, you need to do a refresh. But refresh only 8 times that you can do. So these are the two main limitations of a import. Import. Till here, anyone has any questions? Are you able to follow? If you have any questions, unmute and proceed, or you can give a message there. And if you don't have a question, mention no in chat. So far, what I mentioned is, if you want to connect data from Power BI, we have a three types of options are there. One is import. Import is nothing but copying the data into Power BI, and whenever you publish, the data will be moved to cloud. Power BI Cloud is going to support only 1 GB of a data, and whenever you are copying the data, automatically latest updates will not come. For that, you need to do a schedule refresh. When you are imported, Power BI support only 8 times of a refresh. These are the limitations with the import. This is the functionality of import. Till here, anyone has any questions? If you don't have a question, mention no in chat. If you have a question, unmute and proceed. Okay. Now, now this is all about the functionality of import. So when you are going to prefer import, when you are not going to not prefer import is whenever your data set current size or a future size is going to be less than 1 GB, and whenever you need to perform less than 8 times refresh, this is the best option. Whenever your current and future data also going to be less than 1 GB, and whenever you want to perform daily one time, two time, weekly once, monthly once a refresh, this is going to be helpful. If any one of this condition fails also, it is not possible, not supportive, like not preferred. Let's assume I have only 500 MB of data, but I want this thing to be refreshed 20 times. It is not preferred. Or I have only one time refresh. I have a 5 GB of a data. It will not work. So whenever you have current and future data less than 1 GB, and whenever you have less than 8 times refresh, whenever these two conditions are matching, at that time you can use import. Whenever you do that, it is going to give a good performance. That is all about the import. Now, as I mentioned, you have a two limitations are there. As I have two limitations are there. In reality, yes, you have a 5 GB, 10 GB, 20 GB. You have a huge data. In a real time, we wanted to refresh this one for every 15 minutes or 30 minutes or every 1 hour. We need to refresh. At that time, how we are going to implement is we have a different approach called direct query. A direct query is nothing but we are going to. So before proceeding direct query, import is going to support for all the data sources. It can be Excel, it can be CSV, it can be database, anything. All the sources are going to support import. Direct query, it is only for databases. It is for databases. If you want to use a direct query, you need to use a database. With Excel it will not support a direct query. Okay. Now direct query database. Now now whenever you have a database, it is going to allow you to establish a direct query connection. What is a direct query? A direct query is nothing but we are going to load only metadata of a table, which means a table name, column data type, only those things. We are going to, just a second, let me log out, just a second. Okay. So we are going to load only metadata. So metadata into that Power BI. We are not loading data. Data is not loading. Only table name, column names will be loaded. Whenever we use this one in a Power BI as part of a visualizations, it going to get the data from a database and present it here. So we are not storing any data here. For each and every click, it is going to get the data from database. Whenever you load it or whenever you interact it, always get the data from a database. That is what direct query. And here we are just going to do a data model, and on top of it we are going to create a visualizations. For each and every interaction, it is going to get the data from a database. So because we are doing this one, because it is supporting this one, we are not storing any data. So we don't have any limitation with the data volume. Whatever the import that you have a 1 GB limitation, now you don't have any limitation with the storage. And similarly, whenever you interact, you are getting the data from a database directly. You don't require a scheduled refresh also. So whatever the issues that you have with import, now those are not an issue because you are not storing the data in Power BI. Because you are not storing the data in your Power BI, you don't require a scheduled refresh also. That is what direct query is. So direct query is nothing but loading that metadata from a database. It is going to get the data from database whenever we use the field or whenever we interact, and it don't have any storage limitations, it don't have any schedule refresh limitations. So it is good, but it has couple of limitations. One is Power Query. You all know Power Query. Few transformations will not support, like changing the data types, performing some merge operations. Few transformations will not support. Few DAX queries will not support. DAX queries will not support. So whatever that transformations which are not going to support, you need to perform at a database level. Whatever the DAX queries which are not going to support, you need to take care at like workarounds. You need to implement the workarounds. These are the two major limitations. Two major limitations. Common limitations. The third one is there may be a impact with the performance because for each and every time you are going to get the data from a database. If you are having a huge data at that time, it may take performance. It is going to impact on the performance. These are the functionality or limitations with respect to direct query. This is the functionality of direct query, and these are the limitations of direct query. So before proceeding to the next connectivity mode, direct query, I want to add one more concept here. When Power BI introduced in the first 3 years or 4 years, like 2015 to 2017 or 18, so if you want to implement a direct query, if you want to implement a direct query from one of the server, from one of the from the server means in, like in database means that will be the inside a server. Okay, so from server you are going to connect a database as a direct query. Whenever you establish a direct query, yes, the metadata will be loaded. You can create a relationships and you can create a visualizations. Always it is going to get the data from database. Okay, then after it will not allow you to connect with any of from that same server. It will not allow you to load the data from the database, or it will not allow you to connect from a different server. It will not allow you to load the data from another source also, like even Excel also it will not support. So this is the first version of a direct query behavior. If you made any direct query with any one of the database means, then you cannot connect with any data source. Then what you need to do is you need to load the data from here to here, here to here, here to here. You need to do. This is like additional effort for the people who is going to implement a Power BI. It was there for the first 3 years. Then after what they introduced is they removed these issues. They removed these issues. Like what they made is like they allowed a direct query connection to establish a connection with other databases, other servers, other sources. They enabled. So they enabled you to connect with direct query plus import also, which means that today's Power BI report can connect with a database as a direct query and an Excel file as an import. Both can be performed. Now, what they are calling this is they are calling this as composite model. Composite model. So what this is going to do is this is going to help you to avoid unnecessary ETL loads into a single database. That is one thing. Similarly, it allowed you to load the data into import also, which will help you to improve the performance. What do you mean by that one is? Let's assume you have a Power BI data model which contains direct query, a table which is not loaded the data from database, and you have a country table which is from another database or a same database which you imported. You have a date table which is from a same database which is imported. What do you mean by this one is my date is not going to change frequently. My country is not going to change frequently, my product is not going to change frequently, those I am going to import it, I am going to refresh daily once or monthly once or weekly once, one time. But whatever the my main table, transaction table, which is going to get updated frequently, right? So if you book a movie ticket in a book my show, like in a book my show or somewhere, so if I want to book some movie ticket in my book by show, the list of movies available for this week are fixed. At least on Monday it is fixed, Tuesday it is fixed, Wednesday it is fixed, right? What is going to change in the back end is transaction is going to change. Like at a 10, 11, one person is going to book, 12 another person, one another person, two another person, three another person. Multiple tickets are going to book, but whatever the number of movies that I have for today are same. Then what is the need to load the movie names for each and every 30 minutes? Like that, here the direct query, whatever the table which is going to change frequently, we are going to update that as a direct query, and remaining we are going to update as a import, so that whenever you interact with a visual, these tables are not going to get refreshed, not going to query against a database. Only this is going to query against a database, and it is going to load the data faster. Okay, that was the reason. That is another reason people consider this as a composite model or use this as a composite model. Okay, so this is all about a direct query. A direct query is nothing but we are not loading the data, we are loading a metadata. For each and every interaction, we are going to get the data from database. It has a limitations with the Power Query, and it has the limitations with DAX. The limitations with the Power Query, you need to practice. You need to connect a direct query table with the Power Query, and you need to perform all the transformations, so that you will get to know what are all can be achieved, what are all cannot be achieved. That is all about a direct query. Till here, anyone has any questions? If you have a question, unmute and proceed. If you don't have a question, mention no in chat. Okay. The third one is live connection. Live connection is nothing but you are going to have a report. You are going to have a data source. You are not going to connect with any one of the data source. You are going to create a model outside of a Power BI, where you are going to connect with the data sources, and you are going to create a model, and from Power BI you are connecting that model, and you are going to create a visualizations. So whenever you connect from Power BI to that model, you cannot add any other data sources. You cannot create any model inside here, because you are already accessing a model. Okay, you cannot add any model, you cannot add any table, you cannot create a column, you cannot create a relationships. You are just going to consume this model from Power BI and create a visualizations. If you want to add any table to that model, you need to update here, so that you can access it. If you want to perform any calculation or relationship, you need to add that one here, so that that will be available here. So model will be available at a centralized position. The sources which are going to support this kind of live connection is two sources. One is SSAS or AAS. It is a different technology from Microsoft, like where we are going to create a centralized models by using this one, where we are going to connect with the different data sources. We are going to use a Visual Studio, and we are going to develop a model, and you are going to deploy in a server. From that server, you are going to connect with the Power BI. So this is what one platform analysis services. The second one is semantic model, which is nothing but Power BI data set, which we are creating from Power BI desktop by using a different data sources. We are publishing on a cloud, so you are going to get that as a data set, and that you can access from your Power BI desktop. That is a different one. So this one we already observed as part of our previous classes. If not also, we are going to cover that one once again. Okay, I hope you observed this one. Like we already in a Power BI desktop we loaded, we published in a cloud, we have a data set available there, semantic model available there, that you can access from your Power BI desktop, or you can host a model in a services, and you can access that one from Power BI. Whatever it is, once you connect with the Power BI, you you cannot add any other data source, you cannot perform any Power Query, you cannot create any relationships, just drag and drop and visualizations. This is all about a live connection. What are the sources which are going to support a live connection? With this, the introduction is done. We are going to continue with examples with the Power BI desktop and different sources. As I mentioned, I am going to cover with the Excel, CSV, SQL Server, Snowflake, SSCS, shared data set, which is nothing but semantic model, data flow I already covered, and a SharePoint. These are the things that I am going to cover with Power BI to cover all import, direct query, and live connections. That will be continued from tomorrow onwards or next class onwards. It will be continued another 3 to 4 days, and this is what one of the module in Power BI desktop. Okay, so I am stopping here. If you have any questions, you can give a message on a WhatsApp, and all the videos are already updated. And if you have any issues with respect to videos, give a message to Naresh. Thank you so much for joining and have a good day. Bye now.